All right, guys. I want to go over the tutorial for what we did last week in regards to different ways of spacing out the paragraphs. I'm going to put in this here into a justified type, so this way it's easier to show this example. All right, so you can have a full return in between your new paragraphs, which is perfectly fine. The good thing about this is, as you see, the lines going across the page will always line up properly. All right. You can see over here with like the three very narrow columns, all the lines line up. Now, if you do this and you want to have a full return right here, you must make sure that this space is less than the gutter space in between the two columns. Because what you don't want to happen is having this so tight that as you come through, the eye could possibly jump across and go into the next column as opposed to going down. So you always want to make sure that the space in between the direction that you want the eye to go is less than where it should go after it finishes off that column. All right. Now, if you want to have less of a space and keep everything a little bit tighter, and the other option you can do is by controlling the space after each paragraph or before each paragraph. Up here, um, it's got like a little icon where there's like a box above the lines of text. So if we increase this, you can see now the spacing increases for each line of for the first line of text only, and that's another way that you can have that spacing between the different paragraphs. The great thing about this is like it keeps everything much tighter. Um, a lot of times, it looks a little bit cleaner when you have left align. You can see as you come through, it kind of locks everything in and looks a little bit neater. The downfall, of course, is as you go across, once you start hitting different paragraph lengths, the lines of text will not line up properly. All right. All right. Now, if you want text to line up perfectly within a box, let me get this to. All right, I'm going to delete just one line of text. All right. So we got this here, and we want to align this and this. If we had the same and we were using a full space in between each paragraph, you wouldn't be able to do what we're about to do because it would look a little awkward. But because the line of text is not lining up perfectly anyway, you can select both of these, hit Command B, and then right here, the align to top by default. If we hit justify and hit OK, now the text on the top lines up perfectly, the text on the bottom lines up perfectly. And because we're using a different spacing for each new paragraph, the lines are not going to line up across the entire page. So by adding that little bit more space in between the lines to make sure that this column rests on the bottom, everything looks a little bit cleaner and easier. All right. So there are obviously advantages and disadvantages for both. It's more like a preference of what it is that you prefer to look like. And either way, it's going to look good. All right. You just want to make sure that you don't have any strange spaces like this you wouldn't want to have in your layout. All right. Then we discussed styles and how to create styles for your text. So like I mentioned before, the easiest way to set up your styles is to basically lay out an entire design of what it is that you want. Then once you have all of that information in your styles, when you create your styles, all that information will be pulled into the all the metrics for the style itself. All right, so we have, let me increase, let's do, change things up. And then even if you want like a different color, have a text wrap on this. All right, so we'll have our header text, a pull quote text we'll set up differently. Okay. All right, so now we go into our character style text box. If you don't have it already on your screen, you have this right here, styles, for your character styles. You can also go into type and then go to character styles here. So it's in two different locations on your InDesign pull downs. All right, so we select all the text and then we go to create new style, and it'll create a new character style one. We can double click it and we can name it something that will make sense for us later on. So when you hit basic character, you can see, all right, it pulled in the typeface family and then pulled in the style for it and the size. Because I didn't change anything with kerning, tracking, leading, or anything, it doesn't pull that information in. All right, it does pull in the color for me, and that's about it. So we hit OK, and now we go into our body text. And then we go to here, and you can see the family and style is left blank. That's because it's the default for InDesign. So if you do want to have all that information come in, you'd have to change that. Otherwise, it will keep it blank for you. And you can see we only changed the 11 type size from the default 12. And then color, you'd see nothing. Pull quote. Oops. And then in here, same thing. See, we changed it. We have all this. I'm not sure why it didn't pull in all the caps for me. It should have. But you can see, so as you add all of that information in and you create those styles, all of that information gets pulled into the actual style itself. If you were to create the style and had none of that information there, you'd have to manually put it in. So then, if we were to create a new style, double click it, name it whatever it is, we would go in and start changing things manually and setting everything up. All right, but I feel it's easier and quicker to actually have a layout in front of you, and it can change obviously, because in here, if we decide that we now don't want this to be that typeface, we can change everything in here. Even if we decided, what, this is not going to work for 11, I'd rather have it, be 10. So it does change things for you of whatever it is I want. So just because you pull something in, it doesn't mean that it has to stay that way, but it's at least a starting point. So this way you're not just looking at these styles blank, going in, just adding whatever, seeing it, then tweaking it. At least this way, if you design like a page, you add in those styles. If it changes, you just update the styles. All right, so the other thing now, so we can see right here we have our copy text, everything looks good. And for some reason on this page, I want to change the leading and make it a little bit wider, all right? when I do that, it'll change, but then it ends up changing the entire style itself. Now, because the leading was not part of this, nothing changed, right? So let's go in. You can see everything still says copy. So when I'm going through my design, everything says copy. So to me, all of this is the same, okay? Now let me go in and change this to 12. Okay. All right, so now it's back to 12. All right. Now, because I added in that as a measurement value within the style, now if I go in and say I want to change this, a plus symbol shows up. Okay, so that tells me that this, even though it's using the copy body style and there's a plus symbol right next to it, there is a slight difference with that style itself. So if I end up just clicking it again, it brings it back to whatever that was. And it's whatever it's just one minor tweak in that style of how it's being used will pull up that little plus symbol for you. All right. There's many times that I've seen where I come across a design that for some reason I can't use book. I need to use something a little bit heavier in that layout. So everything else about it will stay the same except for just the style of that typeface. And it will be signified by the plus symbol. All right. Okay. Optical margin. So when we have text that, especially when we have it as a justified type, and you have these punctuations right here that fall at the end, you want to have this optical margin alignment utilized. It's kind of similar to Illustrator's Roman hanging punctuation option, where it pushes everything on the outside of the line of text. So with this all selected, we click this, and you can see how everything got shifted just a little bit, where it pushes the punctuation to the outside of that type. Because what happens is, if we don't have it, and we're reading down, you can see the I and the line bumps in and creates an awkward um, shape where you want to have everything nice and flush with the type. All right. So you have that turned on, especially when you're using justified type. There are times where having this utilized does not work. All right, so say, let's put this all caps right here because of the shape of the lettering, everything works. There are many times when you have a letter like this where it starts with the article the or something, it pushes a T too far out. All right, and it looks very strange when the type gets large. So there's many times that you have to turn this off when you're using it for titles and larger type. It doesn't make sense. There's also many times when I'm designing something where I cannot have this as one text box. It's just not lining up for me. So then it's perfectly fine to basically delete and utilize it as two separate lines of text. And this way then you end up having that freedom to move the two lines independently of one another. All right. Okay. Yes, we also went over when we bring in an image from Photoshop. And if we want to use this as a text wrap, so just like how we have this text sitting here as a text wrap, you can add a text wrap to an image. Now, if the background of it is white and you want to have the text be pushed away from just the image itself, you can, in InDesign, basically try and detect the edges of that object rather than creating it for you. So you go into your text wrap and you hit the third option. If you hit the first one, it just pushes the text away from the box. All right. If we use a third option, and then we go down to the type, the option for detect edges is here for you. You click that. Let's send this to the background. So now, when I increase, you can see the text now moves away from the edge of that apple. All right. So that saves you time. So instead of bringing the apples into Photoshop and then using your pen tool and clipping around the entire thing and then bringing it in as an EPS, if you're using it just to push type away, then just bring it in and use the third option with the detect edges. This will save a lot of time, a lot of effort, and the end result will be exactly the same. All right. Then the last thing we went over were swatches for colors. So by default, this basically, that's it that you get for InDesign. All right. Now every single color that you use in InDesign will always have a swatch, and it will also be, if you drag something in that is RGB, you will end up seeing RGB, and it gets very chaotic and muddy very quickly. Now, to create your a new swatch, all right, the easiest way is you have your color here. When it pulls in the default of that color, click on these three little lines and then go to CMYK, and then you can add in your values of what that color is that you wanted. All right. Another way is when you drag in from Illustrator. If you have a colored image in Illustrator, it will automatically bring in that color for you. Now, once you have that color, you go into swatches and you hit new. So now that color is sitting there. And when we use it in our layout, it's sitting there. And if we have it in a couple different places, and then we say, all right, we're going to do a test print and it's not working so well, we need it to be a little bit darker, and you have it in multiple different areas, or say something drastic, we're just going to change it to a completely different color to show you. When you change the coloring in here, it will change the color everywhere that it was used. All right. So if you have this color used on 20 different pages, if you say you're using it on the footer and it's in 20 different pages and you need to make an adjustment, you don't want to spend the time and go through every single time you use that color. Simply have that swatch set in here, and now you can change it across the entire document. All right. All right. That is it for this. And then next class, we're going to be working on a few other options. And then that'll be it for tutorials for InDesign. All right. I will see you guys later.